Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Welcome in, friends, to episode 128, where we're going to be diving into a topic that I am personally not too well versed in. Well, actually, I didn't think I did this service that much, but come to find out, I actually did it a lot, and I was doing it for free way too often, which is copywriting. And this is something that all web designers are generally doing on some level, and we're often not charging for it. And some of us might have a lot of skill in this area of copywriting and creating headings that engage and creating really good copy on websites. And some of us might want to scratch the surface, but there's a time we want to hire that out. In this episode, we're going to talk copywriting tips for web designers to help you no matter what level you are with copywriting. And then you're going to find out how far you want to go before you eventually may want to partner with a copywriter. And for this talk, I'm very pleased to bring in a guest from Down Under, Jules Dan, who is a great copywriter. He's somebody who's new on the entrepreneurial scene. I actually was on his podcast more recently, and I found out a little more about what he did. And I was like, man, I want to bring you in on my podcast because we haven't really talked too much about copywriting here, and it's so important. And I don't know about you, but when I think about copywriting, I think about kind of like the Mad Men era of like copy for ads and stuff. But the reality is copywriting is any text, whether it's an email, whether it's something on a homepage, whether it's a blog post, it's all copywriting. So again, as web designers, whether you like it or not, you're going to be dealing with it. You don't have to go too far down into the rabbit hole and be a copywriter, but you definitely have to at least know how to write good, engaging headings, and you got to know how to format text. And there's just a lot of power in learning good copywriting, and it is something that's going to take time. And I've learned a lot about writing emails and headlines that sell, and this applies to call to actions as well. But I wanted to at least empower you with the basics of copywriting. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this episode. Jules is really a wealth of knowledge when it comes to copywriting, particularly when it comes to email. So you're going to find out a lot in this episode about how to write emails and how to engage your perfect clients and how to write copy for websites. I can't wait to hear what kind of takeaways you have from this one, because I definitely learned a lot and it was a fun, engaging talk. So I'm super excited for you. Now, when it comes to copywriting can be paired perfectly if it is with good design, because a lot of people who are really good with copywriting may have a very text-heavy website that isn't actually the best at design. And if you can couple that with really good design and then take your copywriting to the next step with really good conversion-based design, you are going to have a very, very powerful conversion machine in your website, and you can translate all those knowledge and tips for your clients as well. And if that's you, if you want to get better at design, to pair that with copywriting, I'd love to welcome you into my design course. My website design course is open right now for you. We cover basic design through design principles for websites. And then we talk, most importantly, about conversion-based design. And copywriting and text is a big, big part of that. But look, copy is really important, but it's got to look nice. It also has to engage. And that's why I would love to help you with the design side of things along with copywriting. So check that out today if interested. And now let's shift our focus to copywriting. We're going to hear from somebody who knows a lot about this topic and is really engaging. And what a fun conversation we had. Here's Jules Dan. Let's talk copywriting tips for you so you can make your web designs pop with text. Jules, welcome on to the podcast, man. So great to have you on.
Josh, it's really, really nice to be here. It's also really nice to be on the other side of the mic as well, because I normally just do all the interviews. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you had me on your podcast, which I think this will come out shortly before my interview on your podcast will come out. This will come out probably mid-August 2021. And I have to say, I want to acknowledge that I'm so glad you're able to do this with me, because we had to reschedule. My internet was being wacky last week, and I felt so bad. I had to tell you, I had to reschedule. I made you get up super early, and you're up super early right now for us. It's like 5:30 a.m. your time, right?
It is 5:30, and I was just saying to Josh before, like, I'm crazy because I play volleyball on Mondays, and I got home at 11:45, and then I'm like, all right, 5 hours sleep, let's do it. Yes,
let's do it. Well, it doesn't look like you had 5 hours, so thanks man. I really appreciate this. And we're gonna have some fun because we're gonna talk about copywriting. This is something I really haven't got it too far into in the podcast so far, and quite frankly, I didn't really understand the value of copywriting. I didn't understand really what it was. And I also didn't understand what I should add as far as copywriting into my business. And over the years, I've realized how important it is. So I'm really excited to pick your brain as a copywriter. And I got some fun questions for you. So before we dive in, though, do you want to let everybody know where you're based out of? And I guess if you could sum up what you do.
Okay, I'm based out of Melbourne, Australia. Do you want to hear the story how I got there, or just what I do for a living?
Yeah. Give us a quick snapshot of kind of your, how you got into copywriting, and then maybe that'll segue to kind of what you do now.
Yeah, I love telling a story because I don't know about you, but COVID was transformative for me because I was a personal trainer for 5 years. I had my degree in exercise sports science. I thought I was going to be a strength and conditioning coach. But then what happened was that COVID hit and I was made redundant. I had a few marketing side hustles on the side. I enjoyed writing. And at the time I was doing Upwork emails for $5 an hour just to build a profile. And this was in early 2020. Then obviously everything went to shit. Oh, sorry, I can't swear. Everything.
No, you can shit away. You can swear.
Everything went to shit in 2020. We can all agree on that. It was pretty bad, and I had no job, so I had to just go all in on email copy. And then I listened to a bunch of different podcasts, read a bunch of books. But there was one podcast in particular that I really liked. It was another Aussie copywriter, and I picked up all little principles from him. His name was Pete Godfrey. And I'd take a little principle from the podcast, apply it to my clients, get a result, get slightly better client, build up my profile on Upwork. And then from there, I just used my experience and I got clients through LinkedIn. That was a better step up from Upwork, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then I invested all my profits into hiring Pete one-on-one to really accelerate my copywriting. That was the best investment ever, best decision ever. And within a few months, I got a 6-figure launch working with Pete, so I got that 6-figure launch for another client, and they had 2,000 people on their list. We made over 150K, and it was just with 12 emails. And that really blew my mind. And I really realized that, okay, 1, I'm really good at this. 2, this is a lot of fun. And 3, copywriting works. And that's why I'm really pumped to talk about you today.
Well, that's awesome, man. And we are going to talk about that email, about how you help somebody with a relatively small list have a 6-figure launch with an email campaign. I do think it'll be nice to kind of build the foundation and get the groundwork before we get to that point. And that's why I love your story, because it's so new, it's so relevant. And you hit on 2 things right there that I want to encourage everyone listening to apply, particularly because you're listening to this podcast. You're likely going to get quick, actionable tips. And my recommendation is to apply one thing at a time immediately. And it's progress that really builds momentum and helps combat imposter syndrome. And you investing in a coach like that is huge, man. So that's awesome. What a great testament to the power of gaining a little bit of knowledge, applying, and then investing in yourself to level up as quickly as possible. Yeah. I love that, man. I want to start off with a kind of a statement that I've heard more and more, and I've heard this said different ways, and I do agree now. And that is that images and visuals engage, but words sell. Do you think that is a true or false statement?
Images engage, words sell. Yes. So images, whether they're static or moving, obviously they grab attention. And if you need to back up a point, then great. I think that's engaging. But if you want to influence someone and you want to do it correctly, then nothing's better than a bit of a story. So that's where the words come in.
Well, yeah, okay, the story that's perfect. I think that's a great segue to the power of words, particularly when it comes to a story. And another perfect segue to your podcast, which I was going to ask you about later, which you had me on. But I was curious about the name of your podcast because it's called Storytelling Secrets. It's not like Copywriting 101. It's storytelling, which I have realized, and I've heard a lot of my mentors talk about the power of story. So it's something that I'm really serious about implementing better and all of my stuff. So I love that you said that, because the kind of the follow-up question I was going to have for you was that in the day and age of visuals, where everything is in an Instagram world and everything is visual and there's colors and we're inundated with great design and visuals, I guess the question is, are words still important? And I would back you up in saying absolutely, and particularly when it comes to a story. You can kind of tell a story with visuals, but you can really do it with words, right?
Yeah, there's something about reading good fiction that makes people just want to get lost in the words. It's different from you can get lost in a movie, and people would argue that video is better, because obviously it is better because it's easier to get a response from someone, an emotional response. But with words, it's a bit harder to do it. However, once you do get a bit more persuasive and more influential with your writing, you're good at telling stories. You're good at maybe injecting humor into your brand, and you're good at showcasing your values and what you stand for, and who's the enemy that you're standing up for your tribe. I think that's where you can really stand out with your words. What do you reckon?
Well, it's funny you said that, particularly when it comes to like a movie, because I was thinking about how many people say they hate movies based off of books. And I think that's because when you read a book, it's your own imagination that's painting the picture. And so if you have something in your mind and then you go to a movie and it's visually much different than what you had in your mind, it automatically can make it off-putting. Now, I know there's a ton of movies.
A bad first date.
Yeah. Like you might have this, exactly. Like you might have this visual, what this is going to be like, and it's quite different, or it's not what you expected, or it's not what you liked because you felt like what you had in your mind was what it should be. And I know there's been amazing movies based off of books, but there's also, I think, a lot of movies that have maybe not done books justice, or that are so different it like ruins the book and the vision that people had in their mind. So that was the best analogy I could think of with the power of words and stories and how you make them your own when you visualize them. I do think this is really important in business too, because I could, from my marketing perspective, I can show, where I've come from and my family and the kind of lifestyle I have now with visuals, and I do, but what's more powerful is my story and how people can make it their own. And if they can visualize their own path and what it will look like for them, that's where the power is. And I know that's where the words come into play. So I think when it comes to copywriting, this is tricky, because I guess one question I had for you is, what is copywriting? Like, I don't know anything about where that word came from. Yep. I don't know, is copywriting technically everything? Like, is copywriting on your website and your social media posts and your email? Like, is that all copywriting?
That's a good question. I won't have the exact Google definition, but I think the best way to describe it is words that are used to drive an action or to influence or to persuade someone to do something. So that could be on the captions of your YouTube, or it could be on the headline of your landing page to get them to opt in. Or it could just be, for instance, an email to click on a blog. So all of them are trying to get you to do something. Maybe it's to leave a review, but it's all asking you to do something. Maybe it's not always asking you to do something though. Maybe it's just persuading you to come onto your side of your thinking. So it's one of the things, you don't always have to sell it. Sometimes you're just selling your influence. You just want them to believe in what you believe, and that's what builds a tribe. So it's not always about selling stuff, but I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does. I think you got to the kind of the meat of what it is. That was something I was thinking about, was at the core, what is copywriting? It is to help somebody move from a state of questions or problems to a solution, right? At the core. I mean, I guess that's what all marketing does, whether it's a website or a social media post or a training, it all should lead somewhere or something. And I was curious about that, because when I think about the term copywriter, I often think about like the 60s. One of my wife and I's favorite shows is Mad Men, which for anyone who doesn't know the show, it takes place in like the advertising age in the 60s. And some of the most important characters are copywriters, and they are doing the words for ads and stuff like that. So my mind automatically goes there. But as I've grown as an entrepreneur, and as I started this brand, as you know a little bit now, Jules, since interviewing me, I went full time with this endeavor where I teach. And what I realize is I'm actually like a large percentage of my job now is a copywriter. Like I do all my website verbiage. I don't have help yet with copywriting. It's something I'm considering moving forward, but I've intentionally done it myself to learn about it and to keep it real since it's a personal brand.
That's a good idea.
My website, all my emails, all my social media posts, all my YouTube description
Captions.
stuff. It's all me. It's all me except for Cam, my VA, who does outlines and stuff now. I say that to say copywriting is a huge part of my life. And I think web designers, it's actually a much bigger part of your life than you realize. What are some areas you think that people are assuming or unassumingly doing copywriting, especially for web designers?
Where they're unassumingly. Okay. When you're writing an email to a client, and believe it or not, you need to have them on your side. You can't just be a robot in your response. You need to let them in the loop. You need to sell them again after you sell them to make them feel comfortable. Does that make sense? I'm sure you understand the importance of client management.
Sure.
Copy in your blog post. How conversational are you? Are you just regurgitating facts, or are you injecting your personality into the blog post so people want to come back so it sounds different? But it's interesting how you said, Josh, how you started out doing everything yourself with all the copy. I think that's a really good first step if someone's doing web design. Not only are you going to save money, but you're going to be able to know if you do hire a copywriter in the future, well, this is crap. Like this, what's good and what's not.
Or if your client sends text and copy and it's just terrible, right?
Yeah, or if the client tries to say, no, I don't like this, let's do this instead. And the inside, I don't think that's going to get any response. But yeah, kudos to you, man, for learning it. I really like that. And the other thing I was going to say as well with copy is that, I'm running a blank here, too early in the morning.
That's totally fine.
Yeah, but next question, I'll come back to you about the
no problem. Well,
I had.
No, and again, it's 5:30 for you, so I totally understand. But on that idea of like copy and doing it yourself, like you were talking about, I do think it's very valuable to do it yourself, because no matter what it is, you can be trained, but at the end of the day, just trying it out and learning best practices and learning what works and learning what doesn't work. That's the power of copywriting. So a kind of a follow-up question on this, Jules, is for web designers who are working with clients. You just hit it. It's emails, you're talking with the client, but it's also the text that goes on websites. And for me, I did not even think about that early on. My first few website designs were all about the best design I could possibly do. The words on the site got the least attention. So I guess that's the next thing I want to dive into is like, how important are the words on websites, and how as we as web designers, how can we get better at that?
Well, you know our friend Wes McDowell, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's all about creating the words and being not just a web designer who gives a pretty brochure, but you need to be able to tell a story. You need to be able to hook the ideal customer in. And if you can if you're a web designer and you can promise clients, look, this isn't just going to look nice. It's not just going to function well. This is going to be something, a tool, an asset that you can, when a customer comes, we have a strategy to take them from a visitor to a booked call. I think that's really powerful. I hope that answers your question, but if you're just starting out, it'd probably be a good idea to understand, why are we putting these words here? What's the strategy to take someone from that visitor to a booked call? And I think that's a really powerful skill set on top of just designing a website.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. I just recently did a training on my top conversion tips, and one of them is assertive language instead of passive language for call to actions. And what I mean by that is
Yep.
typically you would say like learn more or read more or, find out more or even contact us can be quite passive because it doesn't really explain, well, what does contact us mean? Does that mean book a call, sign up for a service? Does that mean ask a question? Like, I think that's where the importance of being intentional about your words and copywriting is key. And to your point, man, understanding the journey and understanding what do you want somebody to do on this website, that's how you craft your words, right? Like you really have to have the mission first and then the strategies come into play.
Yeah. And then it's like all about eliminating confusion because, oh my gosh, I know you would know this really well, Josh. When you land on a website and it's got you got 5 different tabs and then each tab has 5 different sub menus and you, as a person, you're like, what the hell do I do now? Where do I go?
Yes.
So it's all about making it as easy as possible. Whether it's, I'm not sure how to do it. I'm not the expert on, web site design and the journey, but you can tell a good website when you see it. It clearly says, "Oh, are you this person or this person, or what are you struggling with this problem?" And then might lead you to a specific page or not.
Yeah, it's the funnel. I call it like a lot of people think funnels are just like landing page funnels, but I view it very different. I view it as you're like starting a journey for the website user and you want to help them get to where they should go. So this is really, really common, what you just said, Jules, for web designers, because I often see web design freelancers and their website will mix like 5 different call to actions in one. It'll say like they might have a button that says contact me. They might have a main call to action that says get started. They might have another call to action that says like learn more or something like that. And there's like all these conflicting call to actions. And one thing I've really been big on, and a lot of my students have seen success with, is to say exactly what that call to action is. Like, if you want people to get a quote on your website, say, get a quote. Don't say contact. You can say contact us with like maybe a different page or something if it's for questions, but make a very clear distinction. Even like, what is this contact form for? Is this a get a quote form or is it a contact form? Those are different. So I think that goes back to the idea of words and telling people like exactly what they should do to eliminate confusion. And I know this is really tricky for businesses that have like different call to actions. For example, like a realtor. Realtors are generally working with 2 different people that are 50-50 of their business. It's a buyer or it's a seller. So the verbiage is going to be different, which is where I think having like a very clear funnel, if you're a buyer looking to buy, click here. If you want to sell, click here. And then you go into more information, right? Yeah,
that's right. Like we were saying at the start. So having that, especially if you have to have 2 avatars, ideally you don't want to have 2. But in that situation, have you seen it where I'm pretty sure I've seen heaps of different things where as soon as you land on the website, the only 2 things you can do are click A or click B, and then it sort of directs you.
Exactly. That's exactly what we did with my family's realtor. I built her site years ago, and we've tweaked it over time. And one thing that really helped is I think I still had 2 call to actions initially, but it was I spliced like too much information in the beginning, and I think I'm trying to remember. I think the sell button was bigger than buy. And then what I realized after talking with her more is that she actually wanted more buyers ideally than sellers. So, flip-flop that. She wanted more sellers than buyers. So what we did is we did exactly that. We had like, you go to that site now. It's the Barker Team Realtor. If anyone wants to Google that and check it out. One side is buyers, one side is sellers, then you go. That starts the journey. So it's almost like a little landing page before you get into the site. And there's a bunch of different ways to go about that. But it is a really valid point when you have different avatars, like you said. And man, I struggle with this right now because I've realized I've essentially got 3. And this is kind of what I'm working on my copy for. And I hope this is a good case study for everybody to think about your customer base. I've got people who want to learn web design, just the technical side of things. I've got people who want to start their own business. And then I've got people with an existing business that really want to take it to 6 figures and beyond. So these are pretty different type of customer segments, but I'm still luckily I'm able to appeal to all of them right now, but I'm kind of working on the type of content that I should do for each and to better group them into the type of content that I can repurpose to them. So all goes back to copywriting. Like how am I going to, display that? That's what I'm working on.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how you say that. I'm pretty sure Pat Flynn had an episode on email marketing. You might want to check it out. And he talks about segmenting his audience, because obviously he's got a lot of beginners, he's got some intermediates and a few more people who are advanced. And he talked about some, don't quote me on what episode, but he had an email marketing episode, I think with Rick Mulready, where he spoke about tagging. So that might be something interesting to look into. But also, while we're on the topic of pages, I read in anticipation for this interview, there's this book or this opt-in from Russell Brunson, and it's called 108 Split Tests. And it's super interesting because it was probably about, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. And he's just got literally 108 different versions of landing pages or order forms or websites where they tested different things. And he's got stats to back it up, where they use this word, or they use this type of a banner with a button, or they used a button with add to cart above a sales video instead of below a sales video. And they show the comparison. It was really interesting. Is that something you guys focus on as well, which is, conversion optimization?
Oh, that's huge, man. That's something I'm encouraging all of my designers to think about immediately, because that was like the last thing I focused on. And looking back, I don't have too many regrets in my journey, but I definitely wish I would have focused on conversion-based design and tactics. Honestly, I wish I would have prioritized words more, because I tended to be very sloppy, and I didn't think about words as much. I just didn't understand how valuable and important they were. I always thought video and images were more important. And yes, those are super important, but they have to be in conjunction with a word. And let's be honest, when you click to buy something, you don't click an image, you click a button. You click a word to do something. So yeah, I think that's really, really important. I'm actually looking at this split test thing right now. I'll make sure this is linked. So is it 108tests.com? It looks like. Get 108 proven split tests. So that's really cool, man. This is why I wanted to talk with you too. I figured you'd have some copywriting type of connections or some resources that I could share. So that looks really cool. And
full disclaimer, sorry to interrupt, full disclaimer about that thing. It's kind of funny because it's like on this image you'll see this, and then on the right you'll see that, and throughout the documents, like the image is incorrect here, but a lot of them are. But you will sort of see a lot of the stats and pictures and what they're trying to say. But okay, just want to let your listeners know.
I appreciate the heads up. It's funny you were mentioning the Pat Flynn thing. Of course, I think most everybody listening is familiar with him. He was recently on the podcast, and he's a big time mentor of mine. I'm actually going to be starting, by the time this comes out, I'll probably have made it through most of his email marketing course. That's my next course I'm diving into.
Nice.
And this is important for web designers too, because when it comes to your audience, if you have the wrong verbiage and the wrong words for somebody who doesn't need to hear that, particularly when it comes to email, that's a really big problem. Like if you blast your whole email list and say, we can redesign your website or something. Well, if you already worked with a bunch of people who just redesign their site, you don't want to email them that. So like the importance of categorizing and tagging with the right words is so important. And again, obviously it's huge for me because as you know now, I'm targeting a certain few avatars with kind of what I'm pushing out. But for the average web designer, the same is going to be true for your clients. Like some of them are going to have needs that maybe you want to try to kind of lump them into certain buckets. Maybe some of them are more of a mom and pop type site with not that much of a budget, but they do want a website. Well, maybe you have certain services and templates and verbiage for them. Then maybe you have some different emails and different stuff for 6-figure businesses that want to go to the next level. Maybe it's for different services too. Some businesses really are hurting with SEO. Some might have different needs. So I say all that to say the power of copywriting, man, it really is intertwined in everything we do, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I like how you said the messaging is slightly different for every person. And I'm not sure if you were leading for a question in. I was kind of priming for it, especially for if you have different clients And one big mistake is just to, if you have a small list, just to send, hey guys, who wants to do some work today? Because one, that's not good positioning. And two, you're not really speaking to their needs. So nothing is better than a personalized, I'm going against copy here, but a personalized video to them, or a handwritten letter. That's even better. That addresses what you just said, all their needs, especially if someone's a 6-figure person. Like, have you ever thought about, scaling to 7 figures? You might need a couple of systems in place to help you do that. You might need to remove yourself. Well, thankfully, I have a solution for you today. I want to talk to you about a little promotion I've got coming up, and then you talk about your pitch.
Well, I guess an additional question to that would be, how can you find out what some of those struggles are? For web designers,
Yep.
It's probably pretty common. You're going to know what most clients struggle with, but I think this could be really beneficial to help take an existing audience you have right now. Even if somebody just has a list of 100 clients, you could email them, and let me know if you would back me up on this, Jules.
Okay.
You could email them and just ask them, what is your biggest challenge? Is that a kind of tactic you would use to help you identify those customer needs and figure out your copywriting from there?
Good question. So I'm actually not.
And if I'm wrong, blast me. You can tell me I wouldn't do that.
Well, I'm politely putting you down.
Okay.
So I find surveys or asking people questions or going to forums is not necessarily the truth. And here's why: people want to tell you what they want to hear, what they want to hear. And nothing is better than getting on the phone, like a Zoom call, with customers who you already have a rapport with, you already have somewhat of a relationship with. And then you start to ask some questions like, what are your daily frustrations? Obviously, that's not your first question. You want to build some rapport of like, how's it going? Like, what's your family like? What are you working on right now? Bring their guard down a little bit. Oh, I'm curious, like, what are some things that are really frustrating you the last couple of weeks? And they'll tell you. You want to really get a clear picture of what their day is like. And when you get a clear picture of what their day is like, you can empathize. And that's the key thing. You want to empathize. You don't want to just... You bring up the pain, yes, but you want to be like, yeah, I get it. So you're working day to day. You've got all these Zoom meetings and you feel like you don't have any time to get around to being a dad or a mum. And it's hard sometimes. I really understand. And then you sort of segue into a solution. So circling back to what you were saying before, hands down, if you could reach out to someone and offer some sort of benefit and in exchange for them coming on a call with you, that is the best way to do some research.
Okay, 2 things. First of all, I love, what would you say? You polite me, put me down. I love, that's such an Aussie thing to do, right? Like, hey mate, just a quick thing. I love that. So that is totally cool. The second thing is, we just talked about this, and I love that you're saying that, Jules, because in my web design club, which is like my private web design community, we just had a presentation on website strategy, and we talked about asking clients for their struggles and challenges. And I kind of asked you that question as just to kind of get your thoughts on it, because my mind still goes to that. What's your biggest challenge? But I totally agree. And what you just said backs up this challenge that we did in my web design club, which is, don't ask somebody what their struggles or challenges is. Just ask them, tell me about your business. And it seems like if you just have an open-ended question, ironically, you're going to get to the challenges and struggles very quickly. Right. Like somebody's going to tell you about their business, and then inevitably, whether they know it or not, they're probably going to lead right into their struggles. Does that kind of encapsulate what you meant by, instead of asking them what's your biggest struggle, because you're going to get probably the canned responses. You want to get what is really at the heart of the problem, right?
Exactly. So that they might tell you what's going on in their business, being like, oh, I'm really slammed right now, but I'm working on this project. And you're like, oh, so tell me about that project. And then one thing leads to another. You'll follow up with questions. You'll do active listening, hopefully, which is repeat back the problem to them. Like, so you're saying that you're working, 30 hours and you just don't have any time to write the copy. Does that sound right? Yeah, it is right. Okay. And, how does that make you feel? Well, it's really frustrating because I want to get this project out the door in the next month. Okay. You see what I'm saying? So it's like actively listening, making them feel like you're not just trying to take the goods and run, so to speak. You're really trying to listen to them as a human.
I love that. It's true. It's so key. That's huge in sales too. I've talked a lot about the idea of like matching and mirroring, which is where you might listen for like a keyword or a phrase that somebody says as kind of a pain point. And then at the end of the conversation, You go, at the beginning, they were like, I just want a website that's modern and looks fresh. At the end of the conversation, a half an hour later, if you say, well, listen, my goal is to give you a nice, modern, like fresh site, they're going to be like, oh yeah, a fresh, modern site. Exactly.
That's right.
They're going to forget they just told you the solution in the beginning, or at least they highlighted the problem. So I love that, man. It's a great reminder for me and for everybody else to maybe, instead of just saying, what's your biggest challenge, keep it open-ended. How's your business, particularly when it comes to like on a call? Because when you're on a call, it's a lot easier because they're just going to talk and they're going to end up spilling what the problems are.
Exactly. And one key thing that I would really recommend to your listeners, if you want to get good at this, is to just study good interviewers. So Joe Rogan's really good at just empathizing and figuring out what makes people tick and then leading the conversation that way. And being an active listener, it's really easy just to want to say the next thing. It's harder to just sit there and solely focus on someone for 30 minutes and try and be selfless in that situation. Because I don't know, it's just the way we've all grown up. We've all just, it's not something we're really taught in school, how to interview and actively listen correctly.
Oh, one of the best courses somebody could go through in high school or college, particularly in business, is a listening course. Like, here's how to listen, and that will get you clients. Like, here's boring sales tip number 1, just listen. And if you do that, it's going to help your sales dramatically instead of you just acting like a salesman. It also takes the pressure off of selling when you just listen. And I agree, man. I mean, you're a podcaster too now. I'm sure you've learned a lot with interviewing. It definitely is an art. I feel like I've got better and better, and I'm really working hard to be a better interviewer. And I agree. What I found is if you're just curious and you just ask good questions and you let the conversation go where it needs to go, those are the best episodes in interviews.
Absolutely.
Like, it's kind of one reason I was thinking about sending you like a bullet list of like, here's some topics I like to hit. But you know what? I'd almost rather keep that for me as reference points to questions I might be interested in. But if you want to talk about something that we're going to go into, awesome. Like, I hadn't planned on you getting into your backstory in the beginning, but it was great. It was a great way to set the foundation for this interview. And it's funny, I just interviewed a few folks that all said during our interviews, like, I like these questions. They're different than your typical, all right, let's try to keep an interview 25 minutes and here's everything we want to cover. Like that is not a conversation. That is a like quick question and answer. And I'm not interested in that. I want to have a real conversation about these topics that are going to open up to something really cool and really beneficial for me and my audience. So all that to say, completely back you up on that. I'm a big fan of the Joe Rogan show. And I do, honestly, as an interviewer, I've learned a lot from that, like to just ask better questions and to be curious. And the same can apply as a business owner. When you're talking with clients, if you're just curious, like honestly and heartfelt, if you're curious about their business, that will open up doors and that will build trust. So I can't encourage that enough, man. That's great. All right. Ironically, something I do have on the list that I want to talk about is that email. I do, because all this kind of segues into, okay, this is great, but how the heck do we do this? How do we practically do this? So if you can, man, and even if you said there might be some newer examples of maybe an email campaign that you saw big results on, I would love to dive into one and see what worked and some of the practicalities there. So the floor is open for you, man. Maybe if you're open to share about something you've learned recently with a big result. I'm
pumped for this because now I've sort of found something I'm really good at, which is launches. So I talked to you one earlier about a 6-figure launch. Recently, the dollar value for a client I did literally finished yesterday. She generated over like 20 calls at $4K a pop, but she wasn't the best closer. So the value wasn't as high. However, the principles to get people excited to jump into the offer is really important. And that's called a pre-launch. So a big mistake. Have you seen this, Josh, in the online space where someone might give 1 or 2 days notice before, say, the cart is open, the offer is available?
Sure.
But the thing is that it's not like so a movie has a really good comparison. They'll have a trailer a season or 2 out. this fall, doom. And then it's just like a character that just comes in and for about a minute or two and they take it away. And then you're left wondering, okay, what's next? And it all leads up to this one big event. And I find it no different than with an email sequence. However, we don't have several months to pre-launch. So what I found what I found is this is my mentor taught me, Pete, 5 days is just the right length to build that anticipation and really get people excited. And I like to call it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The reason I was laughing at that is like, I'm sure you don't want to say like, hey, I've got something coming out in 3 months that you're going to sign up for. That's probably too long, right?
Too long. But the parallel between movies, because they do it really well, where, you know, they market movies super well. They get, this is really high level, like where they get the actors going on talk shows, going on all the talk shows, the same as us with podcasters, if we want to release something.
Right.
But if you just got an email list, if you've got, say, 300 to 500 people on your list, you can still do this. So I like to call it my Triple H pre-launch sequence. So you get them hot, heavy, and hopeful. And so what you're trying to do is you want to get them excited behind a theme or a big idea. I'll give you an example. So the one I recently just did was for a career coach. So she helps people, high-level executives get like that CEO or C-suite position. And the theme for it was be known, or is it? Be confident, become known, accelerate your career. And that was the subject line, part 1, part 2, part 3. So there's this whole theme going the whole week. We're getting them excited of what it means to be confident, become known, accelerate your career, all the different opportunities it opens up for you. And then it's just leading up to a webinar for this instance. It doesn't have to always be a webinar, but we just found that an event seems to work really well. That's how it worked with the first client with six-figure launch.
Okay.
I'm not here to teach webinars, but if it leads up to an event, it's the only call to action is to register for the webinar, for instance, and then once she does the webinar,
then
after the card is open, you know, that's when people are super excited, like, oh my God, like I can't wait to get into this. Instead of just being like, oh, okay, this thing's open. There's no emotional investment. Does that answer some of your questions?
That is great. That's really great, man. And I'm sure this can work for web design services along with digital products and course creators. I found a similar thing with all my courses. I would generally do a pre-order, which I would consider this pre-launch phase to build anticipation, create content around it. And then when the launch came, it was really good. Ironically, I did that for all my courses leading up to the last one I did, which is about building a course. I did not do a pre-order, a pre-sale, because I had such a decent existing audience, and because I'm kind of scraping into like new territory. I didn't do like a pre-launch. I just kind of had it available for people who are interested. But it did teach me that there's a lot of power in the pre-launch and building that anticipation. And having those type of really intentional lead-ins are huge. So I love that. So pre-launch, 5 days, you said? 5 days as a pre-launch? Is that enough time?
5 day pre-launch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's really important. And while we're on the topic of launches, once you open the cart, make sure you have a set deadline. That's super important. And highlight the social proof. So let's just say you only have... It's a bit hard with digital course. You can't say I've only got 20 courses left. That doesn't work.
Right. But the timing thing is what I found. Like, hey, I have a deadline, and contrary to a lot of freaking scammy course creators that I see, because a lot of course creators will have their course that's like $1,000, but it's never actually $1,000. It's always on sale. And that drives me freaking mad because I think that's such horseshit. It's a terrible, skeezy approach. Yeah, it's like, I show because I do have courses that are full price. And then if I have a sale period or if I have a discount code or something, those are very short windows and they're real. It's not a fake discount. And I'm getting amped up on this because I do think it's a really sleazy marketing tactic to say like, buy it now while it's 30% off. And then after that sale is over, it's 30% off again. This is like a car sale, like a car sales place. They're always on sale. Like there's always a sale going on. It's springtime sale, then summertime sale, then fall sale. It's like there's no immediate need when there's always a sale. So I definitely back that up, that even if you have a digital product, or in the case of web designers, a service that, anyone could get at any time, if you actually have a real offer that is going to end and you stick to that, there's a lot of power to that.
There's a lot of power, so much power to that, especially if you're integral with your word when you say this is the deadline. And so I love to study people's launches. Stu McLaren did this super well, where he had this email saying, I better not get messages like this as a subject line. And it was people, he had literally screenshots of people being like, Stu, I missed the deadline. I had all this, and all these excuses being like, and he said, if that's you, I don't care. The doors close at this time.
That's so good. Oh man.
I know, right? It's
just because I every sale or any special I have, I always get those. That's like the day after or a couple of days after, like, hey, I just saw it. I'm like, how the hell did you just see this? I sent you a week and a half's worth of emails as a reminder. This is closing then. So I have learned. I was really lenient early on, but now I'm very lenient. Not because I want to be a jerk to those people, but I have to be respectful of the people who do join during that window. I think that's so much more important, to be respectful of your good customers and your good clients who are going to be respectful of that, than somebody who is like, I know you saw the deadline before. I kind of wonder what's behind that, what's the psychology? Because I would never, ever do. I just wouldn't do that. The only time I would do that is if for some reason I actually did see something that I didn't know about before, that I was like, shoot, I just missed it. I don't even know if I would do that now, though. I can understand that. But the people who have been on the email list, I know they got the emails. I know they saw them. How did you miss? That's where I draw the line for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not life and death. They can just come the next time. They're like, oh, I really need this. Like, okay, well, you should have showed up. But here's the thing as well. It's if you accept one person, it is short-term money. Yes. Yeah, however, you don't have control over their mouth. So they could tell a friend, their friend could circle around like, oh, I heard from this person that you let that person in, and then your integrity is out the window. So it's you got to keep a rule.
That's a great point, man. That's the integrity of your business, right? And you're absolute. Oh God, that's a great point, Jules. I never thought about that, but particularly on a business like mine, and for web designers with web design clients, they're going to talk to each other. So you do have to be very careful of how you go across and how you conduct your business like that, because if you give a special deal to somebody, that special deal could leak out, and maybe that could be really detrimental. It's funny, just last week or the week before, somebody emailed me and said, hey, I heard somewhere that I could get your courses for 50% off. And I was like,
you should have played along with it.
I don't know who said that, but I was like, and I said, occasionally I'll have sales, but those are fairly rare. And I am going to be doing more like webinars and trainings that will promote a course for a short window. I said that, and I was like, you might be confused with some people when they upgrade to my bundle, which is all my courses together for a huge discount. Like maybe that's what somebody thought, but it really put me off, because I was like, who's out there saying get Josh's courses for 50% off? Yeah.
A common trait that narcissists have are that they plant ideas into your head saying, but you said this, and you're like, what? No, I didn't. And then they'll double down on it. So there's a lot of them out there. So watch out.
So when it comes to emails and launching something, and again, I think this could go into a service-based product as well, deadlines are huge. I know there's a cool tool called Deadline Funnel I thought about implementing.
I've heard about that.
Right now, I just use I do it manually for my like discounts that end, but I'll use what's it called? I think it's Countdown Mail, where it's a very low cost subscription where I can create a counter that can be embedded in emails that just tick down. Things. So I'm using that for a lot of stuff now. But the same thing could be true with like a service-based business, to where anyone could buy your web design services at any point. But if you're doing a free webinar and you're taking registrants and there's a special offer, like maybe the offer is for everyone who joins this free webinar where I'm going to teach my 5 top tips for SEO. And then maybe the service or the offer is, you get a certain percentage off if you move forward with a new website design or a new service. That offer is what expires. Your services can always be purchased at full price, but this offer right now really expires. And if you're harsh on that deadline and you're respectful to the people who actually signed up in the right time period, that's what I would suggest people do as far as this kind of thing.
A fast action bonus. Yeah, I do that all the time with everything I do, because it's always, there's just going to be that small percentage of people who are a bit greedy, so to speak. But it is greed that we're trying to poke at. That's the emotion. But they want something for nothing, and there's nothing better than some sort of bundled thing. It doesn't always have to, on that note, it doesn't always have to be a discount. See, I try and stay away from discounts because I like money. So one of the things I like to do, there's nothing wrong with discount because they work all the time. But bundling in more value, what can you give them a free call? Can you give them an extra page? Can you work with another marketer who's complimentary and say you'll also get this with them, and then you're sharing business with them, and then you're building alliances, and it's all that good stuff.
Look, the reality is, if you pull back the veil of the word discount, there's another D word, which is called devalue. So I have tons of, I have discounts that I offer for stuff, but I've seen that. That's something I've really thought about, is maybe discounts aren't the best way to market some of my courses, because it does devalue.
But they work. It's hard.
They do work.
Right?
It's very tricky. It's very tricky because they do work, but I get the devaluing thing. However, I think implementing some additional, like you said, additional upsells or upsells on our end, but value for your clients. Like if you get this, then you also get this and this and this. That's where that could be really, really beneficial. So I see that as well, for sure. I would love to get back onto this email that you found really big results for, because I imagine this deadline idea was involved with that, right? Was there a deadline for something?
So on the webinar, there was a fast action bonus for both these clients for 72 hours. And that worked really well for getting that first few people in through the door. One of the clients was a $1,100 discount. The other one was a one-on-one call. I think the discount worked better, but but like we just said, it always depends on, I guess, how big the offer is.
Yeah, it also would depend on the customer. A lot of my audience would probably value a call more than they would saving $50 or $100, because I would, if I was early in my web design journey and an expert in the field or a mentor, I was able to ask questions directly. Oh my God, that's worth thousands of dollars potentially. So I suppose maybe, and again, going back to knowing your audience, maybe craft something. You could potentially craft a webinar and a campaign that is for the people who want to save money versus the people who want to book a call or something more high level, right?
Yeah. And on that note as well, we're back to stories. This is a perfect example where this is John. He bought the course. He's one of my typical people with a 5 or 10% completion rate. They're on their own. This is Harry, and he took advantage of my fast action bonus. Okay, when we got on the call together, he was able to ask his questions. We got a whole roadmap together, and he finished the course within 4 weeks, and he landed his first web design client. And so, but by the way, just so you know, the call with me expires in 24 hours. I'm not saying this to do a bait and switch, but I just want to reward action takers. So you give them a reason why. And then that's a great, instead of just being here's a call, tell them why it's important and then use a story.
Oh, that's great. What you just said, people can copy and paste and use as an email template, which, by the way, all these episodes are fully transcribed. So just go to this episode's post and you can take that little snippet and try it out. I love that, man. For the email itself, story is huge, obviously, with some of these big campaigns. Really quick, what about the subject line? What about the title? What are your thoughts on a grabbing title that doesn't come across super salesy? I find titles to be so hard to figure out without coming across buy now, or coming across sale ends tomorrow. I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on good titles and what's behind it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do that. On the close, which we just did yesterday for one of my clients, we did do, the first one was 24 hours left to claim this. On the close, we do include urgency to click the thing. But for the other ones as well, where we're just sort of, laying down the proof, is I really like to target the angst. Angst is the fear. What's that deep-seated emotion that they feel a bit uneasy about to bring up in the subject line. One of them before was, this is for a different client, but it was the one evil thing that blocks momentum. And the reason why we said that was because in his business, he was a success habits coach, and momentum was everything for that client. So if they weren't in momentum, then they would not feel like they're up in the ranks with their coworkers. They'd feel like a bit of a failure, a bit embarrassed. And so for whatever reason, that one subject line hit over 50% opens. Because we targeted that angst. So it's always a good idea to not just try and do clickbaity curiosity stuff. Like, you won't believe what this article said about web design clients. And I was just spitting one out.
Yeah.
But it could be like freelancer horror story of freelancer's bank account got frozen after client. Okay, I'm doing
gotcha.
Curiosity again.
I got you. Yeah. Because it can be kind of clickbait, right? With something that.
Well, that's the whole point, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, okay. Let me pose a scenario for you. Hypothetically, let's say I knew a web design coach who was promoting a webinar coming up.
Yep.
And let's say this web design coach, we'll call him Jim. Let's say he is about to put out an email for registrants for this free webinar. Should Jim Shorts, that's his name. That's my little
Shorts.
That's my imaginary dude who I always fill out email forms with. Let's say Jim is going to send this email, and he's got two ideas for the subject line. One is to just say boost your website conversions, or how to boost your website conversions, because that's what this webinar is about. But the idea of more like a highlighting this fear-based or struggle. Would you suggest maybe Jim write an email subject more to the lines of like, do you struggle, or are you getting bad website conversions, or do you have a bad eye for design? Do you think those are better subjects?
Yeah, so I don't have the answer for you, because the thing everyone should do if you're unsure is to test. So you can split test subject lines. I don't know, it's not the answer you're looking for. However, it's always good, because here's the thing. If you have the how to get more web design clients, that's the conversation going on in someone's mind, right? And when you tap into that, that's really powerful. And once they see that, and it's like, oh, the masterclass is a full, there's no disconnect, right? They know exactly what's up. But if you just have some fear-based thing, and then you don't weave it correctly, so there's a complete disconnect, and you don't properly bridge, you go on some long story, for instance, and you say, oh, by the way, I've got a masterclass that teaches this. Right. That's going to annoy the reader. So if you are going to use, I'm circling back, if you are going to use, say, like a fear-based one that's curiosity-based, make sure that at the start of your email, you hook them in, but you don't bury the masterclass. So bridge it quickly and then bring it up.
Okay. Well, that's great. And I did wonder if mixing the multiple different strategies for curiosity, fear-based, results-based, I kind of wondered if all this is able to intertwine. And I do agree. I think testing is 100% the way to go. I will let Jim know, because I'm talking with you right before I send that email out tomorrow. So in all seriousness, I'm so glad I asked you that, because I'm going to implement that right away. Actually, no, we're recording this on a Monday. That email is going out on Wednesday. So that'll give me tomorrow to maybe figure out some testing, and I might try. Yeah. I might try a couple different ones to see what resonate well.
Yeah, so that lead sentence is really important. So you could have something. So here's what I do as well. If you're testing it, the lead sentence might be the same, but if the subject line was horror story of bad clients, but the lead is the same as how to get more clients as a freelance web designer, a few lines down to keep it congruent and to give the reader a reward or a payoff. It's like, let me tell you a shocking story of one of my worst clients. And this is what I refer back to in the subject line. So tell them about the subject line. So they're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense just from a perspective of a continuity too, just to kind of hit back on that pain point. or that kind of fear. So that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine this all was intertwined in that email, right? Like all these tactics of solution, but also highlighting the pain points, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that a big mistake is that people will write a subject line to get you curious, and there's nothing in the email to reference it. And it really ticks off the reader because they're like, where's this thing they mentioned? Did they just use this to grab my attention? How dare they? And
I just saw that
frustration.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more, dude. I just saw that on an ad on Facebook that was talking. The headline was why webinars are dead and workshops are better or something like that.
Yeah.
But he didn't address it. Yeah, he didn't address it at all in the video. Like there were some benefits, but there wasn't a very clear, this is why webinars are not as good as workshops. So I'm going to keep on going to webinars. Workshop sounds great, but I did not sell me as far as why workshops were important. And even if there was an upsell to that, at least the main points as far as these are some things that will actually help, but this is why I think that's crucial. So that's great, man. That is a really interesting take on copywriting and email marketing and some of this stuff together. I know, how much time do you have? I mean, you got a jet in about 15, right?
14 minutes left.
Okay. So I want to make sure to be respectful of your time and give you a few minutes between calls. I guess one final question, and then I want to make sure, like I said, we give you some time here. Before we get to that, though, where would you like people to go to check you out? And by the way, I don't think this will be the last time I have you on. Maybe we can do a separate episode, maybe just about that email sequence, like pre-launch, launch, follow-up. That's very worthwhile getting into.
Yeah, I can even send it to you with some anecdote, some notes on it, and tell you what's going on. You can read it and be like, oh, I like this. Can we talk about this? I'm happy to do that.
Let's do that. We'll get round 2 in the books here soon. Where would you like people to go before I have a final question for you to check you out?
Yeah, for sure. So my podcast, Storytelling Secrets, is the best place to find me. It's where I talk about how to use stories to connect, persuade, and ultimately sell. I get different guests on from different marketing niches and expertises to come on. I also share a bit about my journey and all my little wins, failures and mistakes as well along the way. And that's probably the best place to find me is in the podcast.
Got it. Yep. And I'll link that. And then, of course, your website, we'll link that as well at julesdan.com.
Oh, people are going to look at my website and they'll be like, I found this mistake and this mistake on your website. I'm like, because I just had a few of those this week because it's not in good shape.
You're a copywriter who's early in your journey. I don't expect you to have the most kick-ass website yet. So
it's
luckily,
because it's up.
It's up because it's up. Luckily, you know what? Something that's up is better than something that's down because you're waiting on it to be perfect. So kudos on that. Luckily, my audience is your vibe attracts your tribe. So I feel like my audience, for the most part, are really cool folks, and they understand. So it's all good, man. I promise you will not get Josh Hall Web Design Show listeners that comment on your site and tell you how bad of a shape it's in.
But hey, when you land on my website, the first thing that is huge and you want to click on it is apply for a free strategy session. I'll tell you in 3 steps what we're going to do, which I know you have on your website too.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it right now. Yeah. I'm actually, okay. Final question for you. I'm going to switch up my final question, and this will be a bit of a coaching thing before we head off.
Okay, sure.
My thought is, and I think web designers could do this as well, is maybe a 5-day video series to help address a certain problem. How do you feel about that? Do you think myself and web designers, do you think there's a lot of value in us having identifying a really clear pain point or struggle and having a 5-day video series that would help that would then lead into some sort of offer? What are your thoughts on that as a final cap on this combo?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the annoying answer again, and that's we need to test this stuff. It's always really harder to test this stuff when you don't have an audience, though, and you don't have a lot of traffic. That's the hardest part I've found. So it's like, would a video sequence work, or would an email sequence work, or would a 3-day sequence work? What's the best one? And the answer is we just need to figure it out. But if you do understand, like we spoke about on today's podcast, you get on Zoom calls with your customers, you empathize with the problem, you really understand what's going on in their day. You don't have a big list. You just say, look, I've got this 3 3-day or 5-day little sequence that solves this. I know you spoke about that with me on the call. Would you like me to send it to you? That could be an option instead of waiting people to just come into the funnel.
That's good. I like that. Yeah. Because I do think, particularly on a topic in and around web design that might be daunting for a client that doesn't know anything about websites, a little like step-by-step type of video series could be really beneficial. It's bite-size. It builds authority, it builds trust, and that could really be a great lead-in for an offer. So the reason I asked that is I'm thinking about doing that for my avatars. I'm thinking about having a separate series for people who want to get started with web design versus people who want to start their business versus people who are taking it to the next level.
Yeah. So. And people I've spoken to on my podcast who are like course creator optimizers where they actually help you get it done. One things they do is that it's time gated, but in order to watch the next one, you have to watch the first one. If that makes sense. It's not just
gotcha.
Day one, you can watch it. Day two, you can watch both of them. So it really drives people to actually sit down and do the content.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, Jules, thanks, man. I feel like we just got this conversation started, so we'll definitely have to do a round 2 here. Thanks for your time. Thank you so much for getting up super early. I'll give you some time to get another cup of coffee before your next call. So I think we'll have you on pretty soon to chat about this. So thanks so much, Jules.
Well, I'm keen to hear part 2 for your story as well. We didn't really get to hear how you sold the business. That's really curious too. So thanks again, and really appreciate every listener for putting their earphones into their ears. It's a really intimate place.
We'll get both round 2s on the books here. Cheers, man.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.